Alright, so at NASA we have this thing called NASA at Work. It's kind of like a virtual community where you can solicit information and gather feedback from the community, and usually this is used for new technology or coming up with new ideas, kind of like a brainstorming session online. About a year and a half ago or so, they asked, what should the astronauts eat during the Artemis program, during a mission to the moon? There's a lot of different good ideas, things like freeze-dried meals that we've used in the past during the Apollo program, maybe things that were a little bit too advanced or things that were, kind of outdated. The thing I suggested was Huel, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a powder, kind of like a meal replacement powder, not protein powder, which has a different distribution of macros. Now, although I like this stuff, it's convenient, I think it tastes pretty good, it's cheap, comes down to about $2 a meal, and a couple scoops of that and you're good to go. It pretty much fills you up. That being said, I don't have it for every meal. I don't even have it every day. Usually I have it as a replacement for lunch, and I don't usually eat breakfast, so I'm generally kind of a light eater. I'm one of those guys who likes intermittent fasting. So I suggested this as a possible solution, and I got an honorary mention. I pretty much kind of a second place, saying, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, but we're gonna go with something else. And I don't really remember what the other option was, but it was probably better than Huel in retrospect. Even so, I kind of feel guilty now saying that, astronauts should have Huel during this very strenuous mission to the moon, when I myself don't even have it every day. So what would happen if I had it every day? Well, a moon mission takes about 30 days, and today is March 1st. So let's find out. On this episode of Scientific Drinking, I'm putting my money where my mouth is and having Huel every day, all day, for the next 30 days. Yep. Cheers. Alright, a few disclaimers for this. I am not affiliated with Huel. They didn't pay me to do this. I'm doing this just because I'm curious. I'm having Huel as the astronauts would have it, just with water and mixing in the powder. Usually I like it with almond milk, but I'm not gonna do that this time. Another thing is that the strain on my body here on Earth isn't quite the same as astronauts on their way to the moon. And by the time you watch this, you will have seen my next episode, which is gonna cover the dangers of space exploration, which talks about the strains placed on the human body. So if you haven't already watched that episode and want to know more about that, I recommend going back and watching that first. My normal routine during the week is about an hour of workout every day. And then of course I have my regular job, I have graduate courses and making videos and stuff. So I'm kind of a pretty busy guy as it is. And I think part of that is comparable to some of the astronauts' strains and challenges that they're going to face during a moon mission. The real challenge that we're going to face here is a hike on the Appalachian Trail at the end of the month. Now, I've already planned that with Sean, and he's going to be probably a little bit surprised when I show up only drinking Huel, but we'll see if I can keep my mouth shut that long. This hike on the trail is going to be about 70 to 80 miles, so well over 100 kilometers long. And miles to kilometer, 1.1. Yeah, definitely well over 100 kilometers long. And again, that entire hike I'm doing with Huel, so it's actually gonna be a little bit longer than 30 days. And God, that beer, when we get back from the trail, is gonna be amazing. Another caveat with this is I'm also gonna have coffee and tea. It's gonna be regular black coffee and just tea without sweetener or anything added. So no calories from that, and it's just a little bit of caffeine. That being said, I think we're ready to get started. Let's go. So my strategy for this is basically don't be hungry. I'm not new to being hungry. I'm not new to intermittent fasting, but this, even for me, is a little bit extreme. This is giving your body something very specific and in some ways not quite satisfying. So the idea is that if I keep myself full with Huel, then I'll have less cravings of other foods that are objectively more delicious. So here we go. Yeah, so there we go. That's what it is before it's mixed. Meal number 3. Vanilla's pretty good.
You give me hope, something about you, yeah. So one thing that's immediately apparent is even though I had 4 servings of Huel yesterday, one right before I went to bed, I'm hungry first thing in the morning. I guess that's not too surprising. I mean, even 4 servings of Huel at 400 calories a piece, that's only 1,600 calories. So 5 glasses of 2 scoops of Huel each just to meet 2,000 calories per day. And that's already under what I burn at rest, which is nearly 3,000 calories. So I need to drink a lot of this just to maintain my body mass. Of course, at my current body fat percentage, I could stand to lose a few pounds. So we're gonna roll with this for a while and see how I feel. Of course, I can always have more, have more when I need it. Some berry flavored Huel and a cup of coffee and should be good to start the day.
I found out that Huel has these savory flavors, things like, you know, Thai curry and yellow curry, and I think it's just a lot of curry, but still, I love curry. It's like my favorite dish, so it sounded good to me. But I didn't know if they'd really fit the bill. And you know what? I want as many choices as I can, and I would love some savory options. But the fact of the matter is that these things require a microwave to work. So I don't know if having a microwave on the Orion module is something doable, or on the Gateway. So I'm gonna assume that the astronauts don't have access to a microwave, and therefore I'm not gonna be doing the savory flavors. I say that now at day 2. Ask me again at day 20 how I feel about that. By the way, I ordered more flavors. I got like salted caramel and peanut butter coming, and I love peanut butter almost as much as I love curry, so really looking forward to that one. Another thing I noticed when doing some research on this, and I was looking at reviews of the savory meals to see how they worked, you know, what was the quantity, if they needed a microwave, that kind of thing. A good chunk of the Huel community, or the people reviewing this, like paid or not, like a lot of these guys are, how do I say this nicely, the hippiest people I've ever seen.
Hey, would you sign this petition to help save the spotted owl?
I'm not doing this because it's vegan. Not that I have any problem with people doing vegan. Hey, I'll tell you what, you do you. So let me clarify, I'm not doing this for vegan advocacy or whatever. I mean, I just want to make sure that the astronauts aren't gonna lose their minds while eating this stuff. If they were to do it, well, going to the moon. Vegans, man, holy shit. So one of the other things I noticed about the savory meal packs from Huel is that the macros are completely different. With the regular Huel powder, you get about like, you know, 35% carbs, 30% fat, 30% protein. With the savory packs, you get like 10% fat, and the rest is just distributed between protein and carbs. Might be good if you're targeting weightlifting or something, or going for runs, but you know, for just regular activity, you kind of need that fat, and I think it would be important to get something that has a lot more fat in it, have the right content. So that's why maybe it's better to stick with the regular Huel powder anyway. This whole vlogging thing's a little bit difficult to get used to. I did it on the Appalachian Trail, but most of my episodes are just, you know, sticking to a script and delivering the message. But with this, there isn't much of a script. It's just me suffering and you enjoying watching. So before starting this, I took a look on YouTube to find out how many other people might have done something like this before. And of course, there's other people who've done 30 days on Huel, 8 weeks on Huel, but with varying degrees of discipline. And you know, the temptation is always to cheat, and that's what I'm gonna try to avoid here. You know, there's gonna be no alcohol. I'm not gonna be mixing anything with my Huels. It's just pretty much just the Huel powder, water, coffee, and tea. And that's it. And a lot of these other reviews are targeted towards weight loss. What happens when you're really strict, when you just have Huel? Is it really feasible for a mission to the moon? I'm gonna keep up my exercise routine. Astronauts that are going to the moon are gonna have to do at least 2 hours of workout every day. So I'm only gonna do 1 hour a day, because if there is a significant difference in the amount of energy or strength I have, then it should be apparent during times when I'm pushing myself the most, during workouts. So far so good. That's pretty much to be expected. Like I said, I've fasted before for several days. So I know that your energy doesn't really deplete overnight. At the end of the first week, and certainly the end of the first month, we might see a difference though. One of the benefits of doing more vlogging is that in a few years from now, where my next existential crisis is scheduled, and I ask myself, what am I even doing with my life? I at least have a video record to answer that exact question. All right, so day 5, and I think I'm kind of getting used to the Huel diet. It's still a little bit bland. I got 2 new flavors coming today. Another bonus is that this video will probably help me critique my form, since I don't have any mirrors in my garage gym, which I probably need to make sure my form's on point. So before any of you just go raging in the comments, I know, probably you're right. And you thought I was done with squats? Ugh, no such luck.
Yeah, let's go!
So bad news. But the other flavors of Huel, well, they're not going to arrive until tomorrow. Another round of berry Huel, which at this point is sinking to my least favorite. All I can think about is peanut butter. I really hope this next Huel is like a solid peanut buttery flavor. Like, that would be great. You know, chug this down and maybe I'll have a little bit of a more reasonable mindset. You know what I'm really craving right now is like the bad stuff, like pizza and beer. I would really love pizza right now.
Whenever anybody cooks bacon here, it's like,
You got everything.
yeah.
We're not to eat. It's like you got.
A million people in the crowd, but I only see your face in all the lights. And as the bass keep pounding on me, baby, I really wanna make you mine.
Still only 1 gram of sugar for the peanut butter and 1 gram of sugar for salted caramel.
Yay!
Small victories, right?
We have powders to eat.
So I was gonna take a bike ride today, do a 1-hour bike ride, but unfortunately it's raining outside. So the purpose of the bike ride is kind of to mimic what they have on the Orion capsule. They have a little stationary bike inside the Orion capsule, which is the vehicle they take to the Deep Space Gateway and back. But it's raining, so we're not gonna simulate the bike. Instead, we're just gonna do a regular workout. So I kind of feel like I'm losing energy. It's not bad, but it's not great. Even after a couple of cups of coffee, I still am a little bit laggy, you know, just not quite focused. Might be just my body getting used to having less carbs or just less of everything. But we'll see. Give my body another week to adapt. Should be all right. So because I love peanut butter so much, I'm gonna try that one first. This is not a legitimate review. And all those astronauts are out there, they're gonna have a whole kind of, all the flavors to choose from. So if you ever get Huel, just remember you only get 1 scooper with your first order, so don't throw it away. It's probably a good thing, reduce plastic waste, right? 2 scoops, 400 calories of peanut butter. It smells like the Nature's Valley peanut butter. And it looks peanut buttery. Not bad. Being a fan of peanut butter, I like it, but I wouldn't suggest this being your first Huel shake. Probably start with vanilla and go from there. If you're used to like things like protein shakes and stuff, then this is perfectly fine. But if you buy Huel expecting something like a peanut butter cheesecake or something, you're gonna be sorely disappointed. The salted caramel, that shit's good. It's the best one yet. And granted, I mean, my standards right now aren't exactly fine dining. As far as Huel goes, I think the salted caramel is the best one they have. And this coming from a peanut butter guy too. There is a pretty big downside to all this Huel that I didn't mention yet, because I wanted to make sure it was actually the Huel and not just, you know, my body adjusting. It generates a lot of gas. A lot. There is one addition that I'm gonna take. Seaweed. Seaweed is supposed to reduce methane production. I'm gonna eat a little bit of seaweed and see if that helps, so. Call me a cheater. So I'm not too sure if the seaweed helped. I can't say for sure that bloating is from Huel, although there are some people online who said that, you know, eating a lot of Huel did cause a little bit of bloating, you know, namely those two studies that I mentioned earlier. But I do remember that, you know, when I was in the Navy and I would switch back and forth between shore duty and sea duty, you know, I'd always have a little bit of upset stomach, a little bit of bloating every time I changed duty stations. So the food both in the galley on shore duty and in the galley out to sea, they were fine. I don't think people complain because the food is that bad. I think they complain because they don't get to order what they want all the time, and maybe they're a little bit used to that. Nevertheless, every time I switched between shore duty and sea duty, there would be a few days where my stomach was not happy. All kinds of symptoms that you usually take Pepto-Bismol for. Maybe if just eating a lot of Huel, this kind of bloating is just a reaction to having a lot of it all of a sudden, and my body just needs to adapt. You know, it occurs to me that all these astronauts, you know, cramped together, you know, there's gonna be 4 of them in the Orion capsule, and it's not exactly spacious. And all of these people getting bloating for the first few days and just farting all the time. I had a chance to speak to STS-135 astronaut, and he described the smell of the International Space Station as this kind of smelling like burnt piss. You know, I don't think he used those exact words. So maybe, you know, farting isn't too much of a big deal since you guys are crammed together anyway, and it's gonna smell terrible all the time. Yeah, so here we go, day 7. So, this is another salted caramel Huel. I did peanut butter last night, but I'm telling you, man, this one's the best one yet. I think the peanut butter could use a little bit of work. So I just also finished a run. I did 5 miles, about 8K, and I do this run about every week. Today I set the best time I've ever done for that 5 miles. But before we get carried away and say, oh, it's because I'm doing this Huel thing, know that my time has been decreasing for a while. You know, since the beginning of the year, I've been running this 5 miles at least once a week every week, and my time has been dropping by 30 seconds or so, more or less every time, with some ups and downs, of course. You know, if we add this data point to the plot, which you're seeing on your screen now, it's not too far outside what you would expect for this trend. I'm also down to 90.2 kilograms. So that's also lowest I've been in a long time. But again, this has been the trend for the new year. I've been cutting calories since the beginning of the year, so it's no surprise that my weight has continued to decline. So I realize my math is wrong. 30 days after the 1st of March is just March 30th, and I don't leave for the Appalachian Trail until the 1st of April. That means that I'll be on this stuff for more than 30 days, so I'm trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to do about that. I would like to extend it so that I'm on this on the Appalachian Trail, which I'm going to be anyway. It makes sense to carry Huel because it's just easy on the trail. All you need is water and powder and you're good to go. But the question is, should I carbo load the day before? Have a proper meal, something heavy on carbs to help me get through the challenge of the trail. So what's kind of interesting is, you know, I looked up 30 days on Huel. I found some videos, but I didn't do a regular Google search on that. And now that I have, there's people who've done like 90 days on this stuff, 6 months on it. Aside from being outclassed in terms of Huel endurance, which is not a record I'm really shooting for, people have expressed a lot of different sentiments regarding Huel. Like, certain people have used it as a weight loss thing, right? Because it's easy to control your calories with it. So this guy lost like, I don't know, 34 kilos or something using Huel for 6 months. And he kind of describes himself as having a kind of 0 or 100 kind of personality, not able to do anything in moderation. By the way, he didn't just have Huel like I did. No, that wasn't good enough for this guy. What he did, masochistic son of a bitch, was just slammed all 1,200 calories of Huel, which is 6 servings of this powder every morning with water, and that was it. I can't imagine having that much powder in my stomach to begin with. And then the other thing is some people use it as just like a regular meal replacement. But one of the interesting points that someone made was we have complete nutrition for our dogs and cats, right? You can feed them the same nutritional dry food for their entire life and they'll be fine. They'll live a long, healthy life. Probably boring, but long and healthy. Us humans, however, somehow we need this vast amount of nutrition, and everyone has a different opinion on what you need and how much of what you need, and there's virtually no consensus. And I get that. Nutrition is complicated. Humans are complicated. Each one's a little bit different. But that's true of dogs, too. So why can't you have a mule powder that replaces it? Well, aside from the fact that it's fucking boring. Tires you out, you know? Not necessarily the Huel itself, it's just having the same thing every day, day in and day out. It's mostly the social aspect that kills it. It's, you know, not being able to have a beer with friends, not being able to go out and have a meal, or, you know, sit down at the dinner table. You know, I try to isolate myself so I'm less tempted, and so it's not as painful. And it helps, you know, but of course there's the social toll. Thank God I was an only child. One thing that might be worth considering with permanently drinking Huel, I mean, just the notion of permanently going on something like a Soylent-based diet. There's a study that it turns out that part of the skull, this portion right here around the mouth and the jaw, is actually quite pliable, even well into late life. And that pliability depends on how much solid food a person has. Digging back in some of the bones left over by our ancestors, they found that those specimens who were known to have eaten harder foods, things like not chewing on bones or less than ripe fruit, would have this wider shape in their mouth. And also further studies show that people find that more attractive, generally speaking. However, those, even today, that have more liquid diets or soups or broth, they have a narrower face. And so there's a connection between eating harder foods and how attractive you're perceived. So it's not too much of a stretch to say that if you had just Huel, pretty much only ate Huel for pretty much your entire life, or at least mostly, you might lose some of that classic attractiveness. And let's be honest, everyone has a certain degree of vanity in them, myself included. My girlfriend out there just threw together this giant tray of like meat and sausage and fried tofu, like all this delicious looking stuff, and it was all I could do to just say no. Pour myself delicious thing of Huel. Go for it. I regret nothing. Nothing, I tell you. 0 regrets. Gotta admit, kind of feeling burned out today. Spent most of the day staring at trajectories, but promise is a promise, right? Gonna work out like an astronaut. So I figure what I'm gonna do with the 31st day of March, probably a good idea to assess my body fat percentage. Assuming it keeps dropping, which it has been for several months, the 31st and the 1st There are gonna be days I just kind of carb load. I've also read on forums that it could backfire. People coming off long-term liquid diets can sometimes have some difficulty adapting to solid food again. Things like stomach cramps and things like that. So. But maybe only 30 days isn't too bad. And I figure even astronauts will have a bottle of champagne that they pop after celebrating landing.
You know, it's not unrealistic to assume that the astronauts will be growing their own food, at least a little bit up there, right? There's got to be some experiments with growing fruit in space on the Gateway, just as there is in the ISS, maybe on the lunar surface. So it's not unheard of for astronauts to taste the fruit of their work. I'm cheating here. My damn, that's good.
So if I'm honest, it's taken a lot of willpower to get my ass in gear and come in here and work out. Feeling kind of drained towards the end of the day. You know, I wake up and I'm fine. I'm hungry first thing in the morning, and that's unusual. Have a coffee, make a shake, and get to work. I'm usually good for most of the work day until about 2 o'clock, and then I start to fade out a little bit. You know, I might have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea or something. But you know, by 5 or 6 p.m., I'm fried. I'm done. Some of the symptoms I'm having is kind of like a keto flu. And if you didn't know, keto flu is what happens when you switch to a ketogenic diet, and you kind of feel terrible after the first couple weeks for a few days. To be on a ketogenic diet, you need less than 40 or 50 grams of carbs per day. However, in each serving of Huel, there's about 40 grams of carb. Like I mentioned before, there's a guy who did this for 6 months. So if he can get through it for 6 months, it's not like I'm running out of energy, it's not like I'm dying. But if we're gonna send astronauts to the moon, we want them to be at their best. So that means they're gonna have to be on this diet for longer than 30 days. They're gonna be on Huel a couple weeks before they leave. So maybe I won't do that cheat day and just keep going with Huel to better simulate an actual lunar mission, because you won't want these astronauts to be having this crash at launch day. Something else that might be worth considering is that willpower is kind of a finite resource. I'm always a little bit tempted, at least a little bit, to go in and get a beer, get a sandwich, or make some real food, go and order some Chinese, and that could be a little bit draining. Astronauts won't have that problem. They are stuck with what they have, and it's not something that they're always thinking about in the back of their head. Plus, believe it or not, they're gonna have a lot to do on that 3-day coast out to the moon. Systems to check out, procedures to do, 2 hours of exercising, so they won't have their mind always on, well, what can I cook, or what am I choosing not to cook? All right, so I only have probably one more serving of the regular flavor, which is pretty much a vanilla flavor. Berry has maybe 2 more. This is berry here, the last of the berry, almost the last of the berry. And granted, those were, well, the berry was pretty much full when I started. The original flavor was about 75%, so I've gone through those pretty fast. And then after that, all that's left is the salted caramel and the peanut butter. So I'm debating whether that will last me through the rest of this month and onto the trip. Probably not, or if I'm gonna have to order more, probably. And the question comes, what flavors?
For the next week or so, I put in my most valiant effort until my willpower crumbled and my resolve collapsed.
So in about 1 week from today, I'm going to be on the Appalachian Trail, and as you have noticed, and as I have voiced over at this point, I definitely stopped doing the just Huel diet. I can make excuses all day, but what really comes down to is sticking with that Huel is really hard, and with all the stresses I got going on in my life, it's probably going to be worse for the astronauts. So I withdraw my proposal for having the astronauts on just Huel, although I'm sure they would do it, and indeed I would do it if it meant going to the moon. It was stressful, but I haven't gotten rid of Huel completely, so I'll have it for breakfast and lunch, and then I'll have a normal dinner, or maybe I'll have Huel for breakfast and I'll have a large lunch and then Huel in place of dinner in the evening. So it's still a large part of my diet as I'm working towards the Appalachian Trail. I'm wondering if something similar could be done for the astronauts. So for the next week, I'm going to be sticking with a mostly Huel, but not completely Huel diet. What I did notice on 2 weeks of just Huel is my body fat percentage was down. I mean, it was continuing the trend that was already there. So I'm down to about 12.9% body fat percentage, which is a new low for me. I'm still shooting for that 10%. I think by the time I get done with that trail, I'll definitely be at 10% or less. All right, so let's get started. Let's start packing and prepping for the trail.